ICE agents stormed a quiet neighborhood, blasting down the front door of a suburban home in a dramatic pre-dawn raid. Security footage captured the intense scene as an armored vehicle pulled up and agents deployed a drone to scan the interior before entry. Neighbors stood in shock, watching the scene unfold. This was not an isolated event. It was one of many raids sweeping through homes and apartments as part of a broader federal crackdown. Critics, particularly radical activists opposed to immigration enforcement, point to these actions as evidence that the agency is out of control. But supporters argue these operations are taking down dangerous smuggling rings and arresting individuals involved in attacks against law enforcement. Among the latest raids, one residence drew particular attention that House officials believe was operating as a human smuggler. Border agents descended on the location with a clear objective. Loud warnings were issued over speakers, flashbangs were deployed, and drones entered the building through broken windows. Inside, one man was found wearing a vest equipped with a hand grenade. At least 10 agents breached the home while others surrounded the property. The woman who lived there, Ramirez, said they were looking for her boyfriend, linking the raid to an earlier incident in Bell, where she claims they accidentally rear-ended a federal agent's vehicle. Ramirez insists that the incident was a misunderstanding, that they were simply trying to leave the area when the accident occurred. However, ICE agents maintain that her boyfriend, Jorge Sierra Hernandez, deliberately rammed his car into a Customs and Border Protection vehicle during a chaotic protest that turned violent. Surveillance and witness accounts suggest agents were under siege, trapped by a crowd throwing rocks and shouting insults. The idea that this couple unintentionally ended up at the center of the conflict is hard for officials to believe. Another woman, Jenny, described the terrifying experience of being pulled from her home by armed agents as her 1-year-old and 6-year-old clung to her hands. She says she was barefoot and unprepared, and that the agents never knocked. But footage from the raid tells a different story. Agents can be seen announcing themselves through a loudspeaker and knocking on the door. When no one responded, they entered forcibly. Authorities later confirmed her boyfriend was arrested for interfering with a federal operation and fleeing the scene of an ongoing investigation. Critics claim these tactics are excessive, but officials argue the use of force was both legal and necessary. ICE agents attempted multiple times to initiate contact before entering the home. Their goal was not chaos, but compliance, and they acted only after the occupants refused to cooperate. The raid wasn't random. It was the result of a direct link to an earlier act of violence against federal officers. Law enforcement maintains that the damage to the property could have been avoided had those inside simply responded. In another major raid, federal agents targeted a home in North Hills, a quiet residential neighborhood. Video captured the scene as agents moved in and led to people out in handcuffs. The residence, according to Customs and Border Protection, was another smuggling hub. Even more alarming, several individuals arrested earlier in the week at the same location were Iranian nationals, some reportedly on the FBI's terror watch list. Residents said a new group of people had recently moved in, and that late-night activity and odd behavior made them uneasy. This raid revealed a broader and far more troubling picture. Officials now believe the North Hills home was part of a large-scale human smuggling network, potentially backed by adversarial foreign governments. These weren't just undocumented immigrants, they were high-level operators, possibly being paid to bring dangerous individuals into the country. Yet despite the gravity of the situation, ICE agents conducted the raid with restraint. Suspects came out willingly. Doors remained intact, and the operation proceeded without confrontation. Ironically, the criminals inside that home offered less resistance than many of the so-called activists who continue to obstruct federal operations. Linked to terrorism, some locals and activists focused instead on criticizing the agents' presence. Their outrage seems to center not on the presence of dangerous smugglers, but on what they perceive as aggressive enforcement tactics. Meanwhile, those very tactics are what uncovered evidence of a coordinated effort to smuggle terrorists into the U.S. For some critics, any law tied to immigration enforcement is automatically unjust, especially if associated with former President Trump. But ICE's mission goes beyond politics. These agents are working to protect national security, apprehend violent offenders, and dismantle international smuggling rings. Sanctuary cities may aim to shield the vulnerable, but they also inadvertently shelter the dangerous. The very existence of these safe havens allows criminal networks to grow unchecked until federal authorities step in. Perhaps the most alarming revelation is the discovery that some of these smuggling operations may involve collaboration with multiple foreign regimes. ICE officials say the network linked to the North Hills home-trafficked individuals from countries hostile to the US, posing a direct national security threat. Despite these facts, many progressive voices remain silent on the dangers and focus instead on the discomfort of raids. The conversation, they argue, should be about broken doors, not about the terrorists hiding behind them.